Hey, Sheldon and Candice. It's great to be able to have this opportunity to chat with you and catch up a little bit on what's happening in St. John's, Newfoundland, or Conception Bay South, to be more specific. Last year, about this time, Angela and I were there for your grand opening, which was awesome. But I can imagine this first year as a church planner was not exactly what you anticipated it being. So what I would like for you to do is just give Harvest City Church just a little taste or give us a little update on what it's been like this year in your very first year having your doors open. And and closed. And how are you doing this in the middle of the pandemic?
Yeah, sure, Joel. It's good to be with you guys at Harvest City. And just happy to be able to connect with you this way. Yeah, it's interesting that it's been 1 year. Actually, not this Sunday, but next is kind of our 1 year, what would be our 1 year anniversary. And no one could have possibly prepared us for, and I think I can speak for a lot of pastors of a lot of churches, but particularly in church planting, there's just, they don't prep you for this kind of stuff. And so, yeah, Joel, you and Angela were here. We had a great launch in October. And then 5 months later, COVID just came down heavy and hard, and then everything shut down. Really, in a matter of 1 day, our whole province was shut down. And so we were honestly left scrambling and trying to figure out what comes next. It was really intense. And so what happened was, in the early days of COVID, we stopped everything because we had to. We were under really strict guidelines here in Newfoundland. And so we had to take the church completely online. Now, understand up to this point, we had zero online presence with a little bit of Facebook, a little bit of social media, and a website that pretty much no one's ever seen. And because that for whatever reason wasn't a priority in the early days of, gathering and stuff. We were doing, focusing more on people, being in person. And so then overnight we had to kind of shift gears and get everything online. So we started our Sunday service went online, and we had a prayer meeting online, we had Bible studies online, we had worship online, and we had never done any of this stuff before. So it's like, hey, how do we live stream? What do we do? What equipment do we need? We didn't know anything. And of course, also in the church plant, we were 5 months old. And so a lot of these families and people, it's not like they had years of history together where they're going to stay together no matter what happens. It's like, these people barely knew these people, and that family barely knew this family, and never really spent time together before. How in the world are we going to keep everybody together during this, right? And so what we did in the early days is we got in the van and we went to people's driveways. We weren't allowed to be close to them, so we said, you stay at your doorstep, we'll stand in your driveway, we'll talk, we'll pray, and we went around to different families in the church and did this. And then, but still, it's hard to really invest in relationship with all the physical distancing. And then over months of kind of refining our online church experience, we feel like we've been doing a little better at that. It's kind of funny how it's worked out. This coming Sunday is our last pre-reopening live stream, and then from the Sunday that would be our 1 year anniversary is actually going to be our reopening service. Just the way it worked out, and God's in it all, of course. And as of the 4th of October, we'll be online and in person. Okay. And so, but I just say though, in all of that, I've looked at the statistics. I've looked at what God's doing across the church in our country, and I've seen somewhere in the area of 30% of people are coming back to church. And I've had personal friends who are pastors, and that's been their experience. But I just want to give God praise that in our church at Revive, we have literally, and I'm not exaggerating, we have more than 100% of people before COVID are coming back post-COVID. We have every single person still connected, and actually during COVID, there's new families been added, and new individuals. And so we're actually, and we had this in a prophetic word. I know I can say this at Harvest City because you guys are all about this. We had a prophetic word on our first or second week away and said, you know what, God spoke, a lady shared with us, God spoke to me that Revive will come out stronger after COVID than before. And God has done exactly that. And so just this month, we actually, for the first time now all summer, we actually had a couple of in-person home group, and we had it at our house.
The province lifted some restrictions and you could have up to 50 people in your backyard, the last week of summer, we decided to do an in-person home group in our backyard.
Okay.
So it was the first time that we'd all been able to gather. There was people there that had never met before, other than maybe they met on our Zoom prayer group or our Zoom group, and that was it. And so it was really neat to see everybody come together in the same place. We had a barbecue and kids are playing, and at one point, Sheldon and the worship team came out and we just did some worship in the backyard. And people were kind of scattered everywhere. And so I was just kind of sitting back off and just kind of taking it all in. And as the worship was going on, there was a dad and his daughter standing over here worshiping with a couple of other people sitting in chairs. And then over here, there was a mom and her little girl on the swing set next to a boy from another family, and they're just chatting away. And over on the trampoline, there's teenagers and kids talking and playing and coloring together. Another part of the yard, there's a couple counseling and ministering to another lady, and they're laying on hands and praying for her. And I just sat back and I was so overwhelmed and so overcome with gratitude to the Lord, but just looking around and seeing that this was really the church.
Right.
This was, everybody just brought the Jesus in them, and they just let the Jesus in them come out in so many different ways, in fellowship and community and in ministry and engaging young ones. And you saw people gathering together that wouldn't naturally gather in any other capacity necessarily, and that they would choose to gather together. And I just thought, wow, God, it really is your church. Imagine that.
Right.
and there was such community amongst the people. And I thought, this is after being in person for 5 months and then on a screen for 5 months. And God, you still managed to connect people, to gather and to grow your church. And it was, it was absolutely amazing. I'm so thankful to see that has happened in the midst and in spite of COVID.
That's awesome. Really excited to hear that and just to hear what God has been doing in this last year. It's amazing. And I've watched some of your online stuff, and you guys are doing great with your online stuff. And it's really grown even in the last few months. And I've said this to you, Sheldon, more people need to see the content that you guys are putting out, because it is good stuff. So good for you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sheldon, I just, to bring this to a conclusion, I'm wondering, has there been anything that God has been speaking to you about in this season that you would want to just share with our church today as we close this conversation?
Yeah, Joel, there has. And I think first of all, looking back over the journey we've been on since COVID, and really the importance of following closely behind Jesus. And, when Jesus called the early disciples, he said, come follow me. And to follow him in that context was to walk with him, to accompany him on his journey. They would have been used to accompanying him, their teacher, wherever he went. And it was more about going the same way as him, not just trailing behind somewhere, hoping to catch a glimpse of what Jesus was doing and what Jesus was up to. To follow him meant to be engaged and to be going the same direction and in the same place where he was. And, COVID happened. And of course, it caught the world by surprise. It caught the medical community by surprise. It caught the governments by surprise. Truth be told, it caught the church by surprise too. And I mean, for us, it totally, I just said a few minutes ago, like we were scrambling. We were so caught off guard. I'm just reflecting recently, like, how closely am I following Jesus? Because the one person that was not taken by surprise with all this was him. And if I think I'm really following closely, why was I not more prepared? And, what's happened is, because everyone's taken off guard, our life, in the church and elsewhere, it's all about adjusting and adapting to what's going on and pivoting. I mean, the catchword of the day is pivot. If I hear the word pivot one more time, I'm going to lose my mind. Everyone's pivoting. Businesses are pivoting, and governments are pivoting, and doctors are pivoting. And you know what? Churches, we had to pivot. But what if it's less about adjusting and adapting and pivoting? What if it's more about just drawing near to him and being close enough to him to be able to better discern the season that we're in? And, you look at the Old Testament, Joshua, when he was leading the people across the Jordan, they put the ark first, which for us today represents the presence of God. And it says that they did that so that they would know which way to go, because they hadn't been that way before. And I think that's 2020 in a nutshell for all of us. And then in the New Testament, we look at Paul in Acts chapter 16. He wanted to go to Asia, and it says the Holy Spirit prevented him or wouldn't let him go there. And I think he was a follower. And I know we all say we're followers of Christ, but I've asked myself the question, okay, am I trailing behind, or am I actually going the same way he's going? And if that's the case, perhaps there's a way that we can be more prepared when then we don't have to pivot. If I had been leading and following as close as maybe I could have been, this all would have happened. Jesus knew it was happening, and we wouldn't have had to pivot so hard, because we would have been right there. Right? And I know we're all doing our best, and I know we all try to follow God and hear from God, but it's really challenged me. And I use the illustration of, if I'm going for a walk with the kids, and if I see danger up ahead, I'm going to pull them aside and I'm going to say, watch out, look at what's ahead. Look at what's in front of you now. We need to make sure we're okay. And I think, God knew what was happening. And I wonder if perhaps if I had been following a little more closely, if perhaps we would have been a little more prepared. And I think that applies to us personally. It applies to how families and businesses and individuals, but also certainly church, and definitely church planting in a pandemic. I think Jesus has just reminded me of how important it is that I really am following, not just coming up with some good ideas. I think the priority wasn't to be online, but maybe it should have been, and these sorts of things. So I want to just say that's what I sense that God's been speaking to me on and leading me through and challenging me on, all at the same time.
That's awesome. I just shared that scripture with our church a couple weeks ago with Joshua, and said we just need to get as close to the ark as we can, because we're going where we've never been before, and God will show us. We just got to make sure we're staying close to the presence of God. So thanks for sharing that. It's so great to just have had this time to connect with you, hear what's going on. We're going to continue to pray for you and support you. You guys are doing awesome, doing a great job, and we're really proud to just be able to get behind you and help you in what you're doing, and really look forward to getting back to Newfoundland one day and seeing the people again. So God bless you. Thanks for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you, Harvest City. We really appreciate you, and miss having not been able to be with you guys this year. We feel that, but thank you for all the love, the encouragement, the prayers, the cards, the texts, the messages. It means a lot to us, so thank you.
Awesome.
What she said. Thank you. Words can't express our gratitude, and so thanks, Joel. Thanks to your leadership team and the GIC committee and the church as a whole. We are so grateful to have been on this journey with you. So God bless you.